Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unfiltered Tales, Season 5, Episode 2. Tonight, I bring to you someone special, dear to me, dear to my heart. I bring you my Uncle Alex tonight, who's a historian. Before we get to him, we want to talk about some of the things my Uncle Alex has done. He's been affiliated, volunteered, or supported the NAACP, President Obama's My Brother's Keeper Alliance, the George Floyd Foundation, the Ahmaud Arbery Foundation, TGR Foundation, the Tiger Woods Charity, Equal Justice Initiative, Steph Curry's Foundation, Eat, Learn, and Play, Freedom Reads by Reginald Dwayne Betts, MLK Memorial Foundation, MISFET, Misfet 2020 Project, the African American Museum, Legacy Museum, the Negro Leagues Museum, the Smithsonian Museum, the United Black Golfers Association, and the National Negro Golf Association, the Boys and Clubs Club of America. You supported a lot, Uncle Lau.
Oh,
So I
yes.
bring you to the show today to let our people here on the HBCU Lounge Network, to let our people know it's Black History Month, to give us a history lesson.
Yes. And it is so important, for we call ourselves African Americans, some colored, some black, some Negro, whatever that you might want to call yourself in the American society, then feel pride beyond anything else to know that you're not representing the true
Hmm.
word of race, but you're representing yourself because race will often hold you back in a lot of areas if you just congregate on that word. So we want to move forward and realize that we have more to offer than just a race. Our history is more than just a race. We are a people, we are a family, we're part of humanity. And when others don't see us that way, then we begin to lose our culture, we lose our religion, we lose who we are.
Hmm.
So I would like to, welcome everyone this evening, to this special event in Black History and Eloquence, a master class on Black history that was started as our human existence and it will someday end with it. A history that has been backed up with facts, DNA, oral, and written content. I would also like to thank the host, my nephew, who I am honored to be in his presence today, and God also, to once again talk to my people about being proud of who you are. I am the co host of Missing Pages of History, talk radio and TV show of Richmond, Virginia. And I invite you to listen to the formats on African and world history and current events, and also on Africa on the Move. Mr. Lee Robinson, the show's host and producer, is an inspiring, intelligent brother who has implemented over the years many projects to serve the African American community. Our struggle for equality, decency, and faith in religion was conceived as a divine right on earth as it is in heaven. That is how Jesus taught us to pray from the Lord's Prayer, to forgive and be uplifted in remembrance of his resurrection as men and women were being persecuted for their culture and religious choices. As the story goes, God's people were sold into slavery, bound in chains as they were removed from their country and culture. But they never let go of hope. For over 400 years, God's people have struggled in a strange land against all types of humiliation. They have been chained, beaten, whipped, stabbed, shot, hanged, beheaded, and burned. More atrocities have been committed against them than any other. Their history has been a struggle in America and the world like no other. Nowhere in history has it been recorded or written that any people since the name originated or before, bound to God by the loyalty of faith, have suffered so. History written by conquerors and supremacists often glorify the victors and explain and expand the hate and violence against their supposed oppressors while they rob the people of color of their rights, wealth, knowledge, and resources. We are in one of those gravest moments of history as the threat to African American history by government officials who are trying to destroy history and religion from its original intent. As mankind, we are all seen equal in the eyes of God. Those who do evil deeds and actions stand out and will face the reckoning. As a people, we are the lost sheep, always in need of a leader. That is why the teachings of Jesus is so important right now as we struggle to continue. We need leaders in the community to bring us out of the misinformation and tragedies that are about to become. The liars and false prophets abound us now. From Adam, Noah, Moses, David, Solomon, the African kings and queens, Nat Turner, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, W.E.B. Du Bois, Carter G. Woodson, Malcolm X, and Dr. Martin Luther King, and many others have contributed to the wealth of African knowledge some folks are trying to ignore, remove, rewrite, and destroy the great achievements of God's faithful people. I invite you to listen to Black in African history, not only this month, but every month. If we lose our history, we lose our culture and foundation in God Himself. We are humble and a beautiful people of all complexions and talents, and we have spread these all over the world. We must continue to teach our children the ways of Jesus and why He loved mankind and the world so much that to show the same love to everyone we meet. So teach the 10 commandments of God. Explain the meaning of baptism and faith. Teach of God's love and grace. Teach kindness and compassion. Teach respect and honor. Teach manhood and righteousness. Teach fatherhood and leadership. Teach love for your brother and sister. Teach the love for the planet and heaven. We must, at this moment, more than any other, stand strong against all that oppose our right to exist in history. We must honor our ancestors and great kings and queens of African history and recent leaders of our times. To rewrite, destroy, ignore, and alter our history is a travesty against the teachings of God's word and the promise to man. Who can be a more loved and chosen than the one who has given his heart and soul to God? And that is our history. Black history is the oldest history. And being the oldest history, being made in the image of God and given His commandments to move forth, we are people like no other. But yet and
Right.
still, we can't throw dirt on anyone else. You know, everyone is our brothers and sisters. Every race came from the African American race that is out here today.
Right.
So these are our brothers and sisters. We have to get along with our world community. We can no longer look over our shoulder and downgrade any brother when out there on the streets. whether it's in DC, Philly, or New York, that we're willing to put a cap in somebody just because they're wearing the wrong color, whether it's red, blue, green, orange, purple, whatever. We should not feel as a people that their lives do not matter. Because, yes, Black lives matter, all lives matter, any life matters. But it's just that Black lives are being ignored. So we have to defend everything that's within our history. And if we don't defend that, then we should have no honor, as they say, honor among thieves. So
Right.
we have no honor, without doing so. So when we see our brothers out there and they doing whatever they're doing, whether it's good or bad, we know the goodness that we want in our neighborhood and in our lifestyle. So if we want to contribute to the drug dealers and be part of the problem and help the court system out and make sure that we pay judges big salary, lawyers big salary, and keep the prisons full, then we continue to do activities, that will do that. But if we continue to move on and desire education and opportunities, financial gains, where we can start businesses, where we can come together in Black boardrooms, where most of the people sitting at the table are like us. Because when you are not sitting at the table with any type of wealth, you don't have a whole lot to say on a grand scale. So we need more Black boardrooms where we can have
Well,
financial institutions and all.
well, we sat at those boardrooms, back in the 1920s, back in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oh, yes, we did. And the jealousy of what we were doing, because you got to realize how much money that the Black community or the people of color have.
Right.
Well,
Right.
during the 1920s, also with Tulsa, there was another thing going on. And that was the beginning of, say, trading wealth from one to the other.
Right.
So as Black wealth was expanding, coming from the late 1800s,
Hmm.
because we're coming out of Reconstruction.
Hmm.
So Reconstruction got thwarted by Jim Crow laws. And so as Blacks who found themselves the elite, of this country. So we're talking about 18 to 20% of the population at that time. And you had at least maybe, we'll say 100 Black, what we would say millionaires in the country.
Hmm.
So with those 100 Black millionaires spread about the country, Tulsa probably had, on paper wise, maybe 20 of those out of that 100. So Durham's Black Wall
Hmm.
Street also probably had about maybe 10. And you maybe had
Durham,
10.
Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah, Durham, North Carolina,
Okay.
because we also had a Black Wall Street. But there was a Black
Okay.
Wall Street also in Wilmington, North Carolina. And they probably had
Okay.
about another 10 or 15. So you had also a Black Wall Street in Atlanta, also a Black Wall Street in Chicago, Philadelphia, New York. So you got all these Black millionaires, but they spread out and they just didn't do anything as getting together and building a bridge, such as
Hmm.
like you take Baltimore with Park Sausage. I don't know if you
Hmm.
remember their story. Park Sausage, right there in
Park
Baltimore.
sausage plant on West Baltimore. No, I don't remember the story, but I know where it's at.
Okay. Well, they were doing good. And, if you go to the grocery store and you see a brand called Jimmy Dean sausage, okay, that's a well known
Hmm.
sausage, Jimmy Dean. Parks could be just as great
Hmm.
as they were had the investment been made not only by the white community, but by the Black community too.
Right.
So we have to invest in ourselves as well as seek investment from someone else. You know,
Right.
we cannot do things alone. It's sort of like everything we talk about Black history, and we look at the street lamp, we look at the elevators, we look at all of the different things that African Americans have invented. But yet
Mm-hmm.
and still, whether the patents were sold for $5 or $10 or whatever, still there was nobody willing to put that type of capital in there where you would have street lights on every street. So you wouldn't have elevators in every building that you go in, over 3 or 4 floors. So we didn't have the capital to make that investment. So we had the patent, we developed the idea, but we didn't have the money to do so, the resources to do so, because we didn't have the coming together of our people to realize how important it was to take this idea, beyond, the table that we invented it on or whatever. Mr. Morris, all of the inventions that Mr. Morris made, from the gas mask, street lamp, and all stop sign, all the other things, he did all those patents. Never became a millionaire. So that's what we have to look at. All the black inventors, mostly just a handful may have became millionaires. So, but they just didn't have that financing, couldn't secure the financing, didn't know how to market their product. There are just so many factors. But these are brilliant men. Booker T. Washington, we know all about him and the peanut, right? Look how many you go in the store, look how many brands of peanut butter on it. Okay. So, I mean, the man was incredible. Look at all the things he did with the peanut, okay? But yet and still,
Right.
Booker T was not a millionaire, okay? So
Right.
he couldn't get the financing he needed, to get to the stage with where Madam C.J. Walker was. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So during
She
his time,
first. She
right?
first black. She was a self-made millionaire.
Thank you. So Booker T should have been 10 times. Okay, if she can do that with one bar of soap, okay, then Booker T ought to have been able to do it, 10 times over, with all
Right.
the inventions, that he did. And so that's what we have to look at. As long as we are threatened by an outside force, as in Tulsa, because that's what happened, jealousy came about. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you remember seeing the movie Rosewood, or did you see it or not? Rosewood, the
Back
movie.
in 1999 when it came out.
Okay. Well, there was a comment, one of the gentlemen, where so and so got a piano. I
Mm-hmm.
ain't got a piano. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's
Right.
straight up jealousy. Okay. He can't even play what the other guy told him. He can't even play the piano. You know what I
Right.
mean? But it was the fact that a Negro or African American had a piano in his house and he didn't have one.
Mm.
So that's again what we have to look at and understand, that jealousy, comes from everyone and from every race. So that once you see someone getting a little bit further ahead than you are, and you
Mm-hmm.
feel that this people or these people should be under you and they should not have the opportunities and advantages, then the first thing you want to do is take away their history, take away their culture. That's what they did, in Tulsa. They were
Right.
trying to run them out of town, trying to destroy them. And Tulsa, we're talking about over 600 racial things that were done like this in this country. So it's not like, you know that was the first one.
Right.
No, African Americans have been attacked all the time. If you open up a grocery store, if you open up a barber shop, if you open up anything, and you got to a point where you're amassing a certain amount of dollars, and were maybe taking money away from them where they were getting it, then there was a problem.
Right.
See, nobody was looking at how much money you were paying into that city's tax base, how many employees you were hiring. You know,
Right.
as we're in a capitalist society, and you keep the money moving.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't matter how that the money moved, because there was a certain amount of people that my father, my granddaddy, my great granddaddy used to own his property, and now they have more than I have. if this is truly a country that's supposed to live by its constitution and the memorable words that we the people
We the people.
rule this country, okay, then to have all these basic rights and freedoms that we should enjoy, from freedom of speech, from being able to bear arms and do a lot of things that now we find to a certain degree questionable.
Hmm.
In freedom of speech, a lot of things are said that shouldn't be said, you know, and with no fact checking of what's going on, then who is to believe what's happening on social media? When you got a medium where you can just blankly, lie about everything, and say, oh, it's protected because of freedom of speech. Well, freedom of speech should not be able to say that you have a low IQ and you have finished college 4 years, a degree.
Hmm.
Once you put that statement out there about someone and it's not true, it can't even be redacted.
Right.
And most people will not apologize and will look for other things to say and double down on stuff about, certain people when they make comments, even though they know it's not true. Not one bit of evidence whatsoever.
Right.
But because of freedom of speech, they believe, oh, I got the right to say, what I want. But we should have more decency and integrity, than that. But we have lost that now. And then when we move to say our gun situation, well, I believe people should own guns. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think the mentally ill should be walking around with guns all day long. Okay.
Right.
I don't think you should be able to walk in Walmart, Target, and get any weapon that you want and be able to walk right back out the door with it and not even show an ID. Or at a gun show or something like that. And you can go buy 50, 60 weapons, and you can
Hmm.
buy bum stocks and silencers and everything. I don't think that's what the framers in the Constitution meant, because somehow down the line, I do believe that they thought that, some people might do some mass murdering. There might be
Right.
some killers in this country, because you got to realize that a bunch of the immigrants that came to this country came from the jails of Europe and the jails of
Right.
Australia and different places. So when you have criminals coming in back then as immigrants, okay, and,
Hmm.
and I'd say you probably had 10 to 20 times as many criminals coming in then as you
Hmm.
do now coming across any border. So these people that came here and settled here, wanted that idea that they could protect themselves from the Native American, basically, but also to make sure that they could keep their slaves on their plantations, under ban.
Correct.
But I still, for the life of me, do not understand how that sometimes a lot of the slave owners, plantation owners, to get more land or acquire more land, because we got to realize that the 13 colonies were all chartered. Okay, so they chartered by the crown,
Hmm.
and different ones were then sublotted, and they got different amounts of land, as they came over
Right.
from maybe a York, Duke, or anyone. And so now, if you could go out and take another, say, 200 acres or 300 or 1,000 acres that belonged to some Indian camp that was, say, a mile down the road,
Hmm.
but you believe that that was good farmland, that you could raise more cotton or tobacco on it. So you might go out and buy another 50, 60 guns and arm your slaves. Those slaves go out there with the overseers and they attack those Indians and run them off. The land becomes yours. And so now those slaves come back to that plantation with those weapons and they give them back to the master. That was one of the most intriguing things that I ever learned about, Black history, that they were
Hmm.
actually given weapons to go out there and drive someone else off, and then came back to the plantation and handed those weapons back over
Right.
to the men. That's really really getting on your mind,
Right.
psychology, that you are so broken that you could believe that this is better than right at this moment I can get my freedom. I can get
Right.
away from it. But again, that goes back to what Malcolm X was talking about, field Negroes and house Negroes.
Right.
And so we still have that analogy, now. We still have field Negroes and we
Hmm.
still have house Negroes.
Right.
I'll always be a field Negro. Okay, regardless what. So that's where you're gonna put me at, because I'm running away. I'm not gonna wait for Harriet Tubman to come in the dress, middle of the night with a pistol, threatening me if I don't, go with her. Okay,
Right.
she ain't got. I'll be so far in front of Harriet. She'll be saying, "Hey, slow down."
Well, I mean, yeah, hey, I get it. I mean, but what she also said, I could have saved more
Oh yes,
if they knew, but you
if
know,
they knew they were a slave, and that's
right.
because again, their psychic had been
Hmm.
messed up. And even when you treat a dog or anything bad, they still come back to you,
Right.
regardless what. Even in an abusive relationship where we have with females today, where the
Hmm.
guy just pounds on them, beat them, and then when the
Hmm.
officers come to get him, they say, "Please don't take my husband or my boyfriend." You know what I mean?
Right.
And he just then slapped them upside the head 3 or 4 times, before the officer got there.
Right.
So it's the same analogy that you have been brainwashed to stay in that situation and you can't see yourself out of it, to have it. Because like I said, I say we need leaders. We, as a
Hmm.
people, we always have. And it's a shame that we have always felt that someone outside of the tribe could do a better job than somebody in the tribe.
Right.
In other words, right now, if anywhere you go and you're in a meeting, if somebody come from the outside that you don't know, they get automatic respect. Okay.
Right.
I've walked on the streets in Baltimore, DC, Philly. you know,
Right.
I've gotten more respect. Nobody know me. I ain't
Right.
got no history. And I get that immediate, respect. And it's not that, I'm blinging anything or whatever, but I'm different than what they've seen.
Hmm.
And when you're different from what somebody's seen, then they want to be with something, that's different. They don't want to be the
Right.
same old, that's in the hood, not at all.
Right.
But let somebody come from out of the hood into the hood, then they'll do more damage, to the people right there in that community. So that's why, we have to really worry about politicians, who,
Right.
come in and do, things. And we want, politicians that maybe grew up around us, know something about our situation or whatever. But we gotta, look for good leaders, you know.
Right.
That's what happened with Dr. King. That's what happened with, Malcolm X. I mean, who would have ever thought that Malcolm X would have became the leader he was?
Yeah, I mean, what was it
His
George J.
whole,
Red?
yeah, his whole life was against them. You know what I mean? And
Right.
even he himself couldn't believe the conversion.
Right.
But see, we don't know what path, as I say, I talked about religion there, God. We don't know what path is ahead of us,
Right.
because that those were the people we were.
Right.
We were David. We were Noah. Okay. We were Solomon. Those are our people. And
Hmm.
then those people, of color, then we should understand today that there's still more Davids in us. There's still more
Hmm.
Solomons in us. We are great people. We've done great things. But again, if we did not continue as a people, then just like anything else, once weeds grow up, they tough to get rid of. You
Right.
know, yeah, it's tough to clear a field once everything that went wild. You
Yeah, it
basically
is.
almost got to burn it off or push it over with a bulldozer or something. You see what I'm saying? But as
Right.
long as you can keep everything nurtured, down, then everything is okay. And we as a people have to learn to support ourselves. The teachings of Malcolm X, are be through the roof. and especially, just before he was, killed, because he had a lot of great things that he was proposing, not only for
Right.
himself, because remember now, he had changed
Right.
and changed. And so he was now willing to work with Dr. King and everyone else, Jesse Jackson on the breadbasket, and
Mhm.
everything. So when you open up your eyes and you understand that everybody counts, not just one, particular set of people, then it makes a difference.
Right.
Yeah, we can't just, say, hey, I'm just going to deal with you. You know, we'll never make it in business. Okay. The
Right.
Jews and everybody else that come in our neighborhood, Arabs or whatever, Chinese, and they open up business and do whatever, that they want to do. They come because there's money in
It's
that situation.
that
Yeah,
black dollar.
thank you. They know that even in their community, it's limited, because most
Right.
likely in their community, they're in competition against European Americans.
Right.
Okay. So if I'm in competition against European Americans, then I got to put my money and my business over here where I know that I can clear, plenty of money. And so we look at our dollar as a limited resource, but our dollar is a powerful resource, you know.
Right.
And as our education, with our HBCUs, the same thing. Um, is a great thing, to go to any HBCU. I'm glad to see anyone, tout their chest out a little bit, to say
Yeah,
that
now you know
they.
I'm gonna cut you off because I'm like the black sheep of the family because I went to Maryland Eastern Shore and everybody else like y'all got that whole A&T thing going on down there, and
Yeah.
like, I didn't mess the whole thing up by going to Eastern Shore and everybody else whole A&T thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. But again, that's what we have to look at,
Right,
because those were the first opportunities that our parents and grandparents had to be, as far as going to 4-year school, a college,
right,
or institution. So now with broader opportunities out there, and it's the choice of the child more so than going with tradition,
right.
okay, of family's tradition. Okay, so you get a pass with me.
Hey,
You
yeah,
get a pass with
hopefully
me.
I get a pass, yeah, because I'm not come down there A&T, I'm like, nah,
Oh yeah.
I didn't
Oh
go
yeah.
there. I didn't go
Yep.
there.
Not at all. And we up Central and Winston-Salem, State University. So we have
Yes.
so many, and so many of your uncles, they went through those doors, of those
Right.
HBCUs, and they're extremely proud of that. Your oldest uncle, he's over 90 now, Jesse, and
Okay.
he was at A&T,
Hmm.
and during the turbulent time. And so he would also got an opportunity to make it to the March on Washington and see
Right.
Dr. King speak. So there are so many great things that HBCUs participated in. The
Hmm.
SNCC, guys, coming from college, with Representative Lewis and all. So
Right.
when you're putting together and if one and that was one of the biggest conversations that I'm glad that I've had in all the Black History Month celebrations that I got an opportunity to talk about this month, is because of the student nonviolent associations, okay, in this country.
Hmm.
It was the young people, the older dogs, okay, the OGs, okay, at that time.
Right.
They were afraid to lose their jobs and different things like that, to go out there protesting, marching, and stuff like that, okay? Because they
Right.
wanted to feed their families. They didn't want to lose their homes and all kinds of crazy stuff. So a lot of older African Americans during the early 60s, 50s, early 60s, and 70s, no, they weren't out there marching like the young folks was.
Hmm.
So to say that the gains of the civil rights movement, yeah, it took a 30-some-year-old Dr. Martin Luther King. You see what I'm saying? To get things started and moving on. It took a young
Right.
Jesse Jackson, okay, and a young Representative Lewis, to do these things, young Ralph Abernathy. So it took these young men, to do something because, like I said, the older dogs, those old OGs,
Mm-hmm.
they would trip. I know a lot of, I heard the conversations, and they didn't want to be out there, and so they sent those those ones out there, and then they sent us out there, as children, to be on
Right.
the front lines. So your uncle was out there, on the front lines, with the dogs and the fire hoses and everything
Right.
else you want to call it. Okay, but he was there. So I saw a change in America. If I could ever go back, and which I would not truly want to do, because that was a terrible time in our history. Now, family wise, I don't think it was no more closer in the black community. Because
Right.
again, you heard the stories of, oh man, you can leave your door open. We come to
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore and we leave the door open, leave the windows up.
Shit, you can't. No, you can't.
All right, Monument Street, up the Montfort Avenue,
Yeah.
Patterson, okay? Okay.
Right.
Liberty
Can't leave
Heights.
them doors open. Can't leave them windows open.
Okay. DC, okay? It didn't matter,
Right.
you know, at all. Philly, you know, we leave the doors open. You can tell your neighbor I'm going to the store. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
watch my door. Okay, you have the back
Mm-hmm.
door open, windows up, and everything. You can't see nothing coming down the alley. You hear me? But nobody bothered nothing at all. So the black community was so tight back then, and
Mm-hmm.
and you couldn't do nothing. Okay, and if you needed anything, your neighbor or somebody down the block, whatever they had, they took care of you.
Right.
One of the scenes in Malcolm X, when he smiled and he looked around and he saw one of his buddies and he said, "My man." You know what I mean? When somebody back then, looked at you and they said, "My man," you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That means you had nothing to worry about. That guy was gonna take care of you. Whether it was liquor, whether it was drugs, whether anything, women, that was your
Mm-hmm.
man. And he took care of
Right.
you. Now, you better watch anybody except my man now.
Correct. But
Yeah.
we going to do, Uncle, because I told you you're gonna have two parts. Because we
Yeah.
already clipped the time already for the day. So I know you wanted to bring those books up real quick. So if you
Yeah.
could run those books that you wanted to bring up,
Yeah.
we got
Yeah.
part
Definitely.
two
Let me
from
go and
us.
do, because again, this is Black history, and this is what we truly need to be focused on, not only this month but every month. But
Okay.
brothers on the men. Okay.
Okay.
And that's by Ernest H. Johnson. Understanding and Healing Anger for African American Men and Women. And don't tell
Okay.
me that African Americans do not have problems. Okay.
Right.
So, The Invisible Man
Right.
by Ralph Ellison,
Ellison.
which is just wonderful, of the things that he wrote and different things. And like I say, next show, maybe we can, go over that. The Other Westmore. I guess you know that cat, right there.
Yeah.
And
Governor of
this is
Maryland.
just a wonderful book about Westmore. And I'm so glad that I got an opportunity to have seen him in person.
Right.
The Soul of a Butterfly by Muhammad Ali.
Ali.
And we know about the butterfly, okay?
But yep,
And the
Stingray.
sting by the bee.
Yep.
And then for the Negro Leagues, for the sports, only the ball was white. And
Right.
that gives you a lot of the great ones like Satchel Paige, not only just Jackie Robinson that we
Mm-hmm.
talk about all the time. Barack Obama, The Audacity of Hope. And I don't need to say anymore because Obama was our first.
Right.
Black Indians. So many
Okay.
blacks in this country have no idea of how close they are heritage to the Native Americans. So
Right.
at least if you were a slave and coming out of bondage, and especially the South, they say about 98% of us have
Mm.
some relationship to Native Americans. And that's by
Right.
William Laurel Cat. Then one of my buddies, and I'm glad all my books, as you'll find, this is the wealthy and white. Why guys
Right.
like me have to show up, step up, and give others a hand up. Ed Minson, he's a
Right.
billionaire,
Okay.
and he's a wonderful gentleman who gives back and does things for black entrepreneurs.
Right.
Frederick Douglass, the narrative and life.
Frederick Douglass.
Yes, and by Frederick. No, as they say, he doesn't need any other introduction. W.E.B. Du Bois, the souls of black folks. Then how the North promoted, prolonged, and
Hmm.
profited from slavery and complicity. And there's a bunch
Okay.
of authors, but it's a great book because it tells you how America got its wealth. Death of a King. This is a wonderful book by Tavis Smiley, and I read it, and it's just great. You know, 400 Souls by Abram X. Kennedy, which is a wonderful book. Again, don't need no other introduction because 400 years of slavery stands for itself. And so with 400 souls,
Avery.
it's just different stories
Right.
in it. A president in the family. We all know about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, but
Hmm.
that goes into detail about it. And it's a shame that he kept her in the basement at Monticello. Stamped from the beginning, the definite history of racist ideas in America. That's
Hmm.
Abram H. Kennedy again. Wonderful book. He's a wonderful teacher and professor. Dreamer by Charles Johnson. Off the chain when you read this one right here.
Hmm.
I do have other books, Color
Okay.
Purple, which we love Color Purple. This Love by Toni Morrison.
Right.
She wrote a lot of good books.
Hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Um, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. The New Jim Crow. I mean, no home
Hmm.
is complete without Michelle's book right here. Now, the Tuskegee Airmen chronology. Trump
Right.
stopped the Tuskegee showing program, but these
Hmm.
gentlemen deserve more than just a few moments of history. They deserve a whole lot of history. And again, another book on Frederick Douglass. I'm sort of partial to a lot of the things that he said, and that's by William S. McKinney. Then one of my friends and one of Dr. King's friends who's still around at the crossroads of fear and freedom, the
Right.
fight for social and educational justice. Robert L. Greene,
Okay.
outstanding man, individual, dean of Michigan State University. Isn't that something?
Yep.
The miseducation of the Negro. I had to have that one.
I know.
Carter G. Woodson. Up from Slavery. Booker T. Washington.
All right.
Wolf Whistle. Story of Emmett Till. Wolf
Hmm.
Whistle.
Wolf whistle.
Yes. The Whiteness of Wealth by Dorothy A. Brown.
All
Okay.
right.
That's a great book. And then another great book, The Measure of a Man by Sidney
Sidney
Poitier.
Poitier.
Oh, yes. And then, most last but least, let me move this out the way. But Alexander Hamilton,
Okay.
wonderful black man. Okay, they did a lot of things. One of our founding fathers. Don't ever forget that. As the
Right.
show, Hamilton. Hopefully
Hamilton.
you got a chance, to see the play. One, excuse me. Again, one of my favorite books, 12 Days in May. 12 Days in May.
Pride and Freedom. 1861.
Yep, that's it. And one of the greatest books. This one has been pulled from the shelves, but
Story of Mankind.
yeah, The Story of Mankind. and by Hendrik Willem van Loon. And it gives you the absolute history written by a white man who says that Africans were here first. They did a lot of great things, built a lot of great things, and they will continue to do so, against what Willie Lynch's letter, put it that way. If you know about the Willie Lynch letter. So now you got one
Yes.
that wrote negative about us, and then you had one that write positive about us. Okay, so that's the
Right.
the the um the answer to Willie Lynch. Put it that way. And so Mr. Willie Lynch, if he had read that book, he would have never wrote that letter. But he wrote that
Right.
letter because he wanted to make sure that the slaves stayed on the plantation, and plantation owners knew how to keep us in bondage and slavery. So
Right.
that makes a difference.
So what we're gonna do, Uncle Al, we told you we'll bring you back for part two so we can continue the
Okay.
conversation. And I will definitely have my viewers listen to that. Well, you can send it to me for that Ralph Ellison piece, and we can go over that on the next time. So
Okay.
we
Yeah.
got to get
Definitely.
together so we can figure out a hash out a date when you can come back. I know you're busy. You got a lot of things you do.
Oh yes. Yes. Without a doubt. And just as a final comment, a thought. I want to thank you for giving me an opportunity because
Thank you.
I get an opportunity to speak a lot at churches and different things, community events or whatever, and I try and make sure that first of all my facts are accurate. I do go back to the source, to the books, or whoever wrote it,
Hmm.
and I try and make sure that 100% that people understand, what I'm saying, to them, because there's
Hmm.
some people that you can tell them all day something, but they
Hmm.
still get confused and they can't tell you 5 minutes later, what someone said to them. If they,
Right.
ask, you ever played that game where you tell one person something and then it goes to the end of the line. And when it gets to the end of the line, it's
Story
something
didn't
totally
change. Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Story didn't
So,
change.
so we have to do that, in teaching history, what we're doing tonight. We
Right.
have to make sure that whatever information that we're giving out is accurate
Right.
and also uplifting, up so that it's going to make your financial state here in America, much better. Because that's what it's all
Right.
about, being able to assess, the dollar, that's out there and make a
Hmm.
better life for ourselves and our children. Legacy is what they call it, legacy. So we have to pass on a legacy. And that legacy not only has to be in money, but it has to be in knowledge and understanding
Right.
and common sense.
Right. So that's how we're gonna end this one. We're gonna get together and do a part two. This can be viewed right after we hang up, but also if you just want to do the audio will be out Friday. Unfiltered Tales on all streaming platforms. And I know you got your podcast. What's your podcast called? Well,
Again, it's a co-host of Missing Pages of History, and that's out of Richmond,
Missing
Virginia.
Pages of History.
History, yes, and that's out of
Let me put that
Richmond,
in
Virginia.
there. Missing Pages
Of history, out of Richmond, Virginia. And we've been doing it since, well, they have been doing it ever since
All right, well,
2000, and I've started in 2018.
okay. Well, people gonna tune into that. And thank you for coming. And I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Same time,
Okay.
same place, 7 p.m. on Unfiltered Tales. But I might have a pop up depending on what my uncle say. I'm gonna talk to my uncle tomorrow, see what he say if he want to come back next week sometime and do part two to this.
Sound wonderful. Sound wonderful.
So other than that, same place, same time next week. Unfiltered Tales, 7 p.m. Wednesday on the HBCUL network. I'll see you guys next week.
All right, then. Thank you.